A young dreamer faces challenges and discovers that even the wealthiest can hide deep scars. Amid betrayals and unexpected alliances, she proves that courage and integrity can change destinies. The main hall of the Grand Central Hotel Chicago buzzed with preparations for the charity event taking place that evening. Emily Carter, in her impeccable receptionist uniform, rushed back and forth, ensuring every detail was perfect. Her dark brown hair, usually tied in an elegant bun, was beginning to come loose from the day's hustle. The 23-year-old had started her shift at 6 in the morning, determined to prove her worth. She wasn't just another employee, she was a business administration student who dreamed of one day managing her own business. Every event at the hotel was a learning opportunity, a chance to observe how the business world operated. "Emily, we need you at the main entrance," her supervisor's voice echoed through the walkie-talkie. "The first VIP guests are arriving." Quickly adjusting her bun and checking her reflection in one of the French windows of the hall, Emily headed to the hotel entrance. The sky over Aspen was beginning to take on the orange hues typical of a Rocky Mountains sunset, creating a stunning backdrop for the event. It was at that moment she saw him for the first time. Liam Thompson arrived quietly, his motorized wheelchair gliding silently over the red carpet. Unlike other businessmen who sought attention, he seemed to prefer staying unnoticed, though it was impossible not to notice him. "Good evening, Mr. Thompson," Emily greeted him with her professional smile. "Welcome to the Grand Central Hotel Chicago." Liam looked up and Emily felt momentarily disconcerted by the intensity of his gaze. There was something magnetic about his presence, a mix of vulnerability and strength that intrigued her instantly. "Thank you," he replied, in a surprisingly warm voice. "Could you point me to the most accessible route to the main hall?" "Certainly, sir. In fact, I can accompany you myself." During the short walk, Emily noticed that Liam wasn't like the other businessmen who frequented the hotel. He asked questions about her, showed genuine interest in her answers, and most surprisingly laughed spontaneously, without the artificial formality so common among VIP guests. "So you're studying business administration?" he asked as they waited for the elevator. "Yes, sir. At night after work." "And what is your dream, Emily? What do you plan to do after you graduate?" The question caught her off guard. Normally, the guests barely noticed her presence, let alone showed interest in her dreams. I want to start my own business," she replied, feeling her cheeks flush. "Something that can help other people like me, who come from humble families, achieve their dreams too." Liam's smile widened, reaching his eyes. "You know, Emily, sometimes the simplest dreams are the ones with the power to change the most lives." When they reached the main hall, Emily noticed something had changed. An inexplicable connection had formed in those brief minutes of conversation. She tried to push the thought away. After all, what future could there be between a simple receptionist and one of the most influential businessmen in the country? "Thank you for the company, Emily," Liam said before joining the other guests. "I hope our paths cross again." What she didn't know was that this casual encounter was about to completely change the course of her life. As she watched Liam walk away, Emily couldn't imagine that this night would be just the beginning of a story that would challenge all her certainties and make her question everything she believed about love, trust, and appearances. The night continued busily, with Emily alternating between her usual responsibilities and occasional stolen glances in Liam's direction. She watched him interact with other guests, noticing how his presence commanded respect despite his physical condition. There was something enigmatic about him, a mystery she couldn't decipher but that drew her in inexplicably. In the weeks following the charity event, Emily couldn't get Liam Thompson out of her thoughts. Every time the hotel door opened, her heart raced in anticipation of seeing him again. Yet life went on as usual, long hours of work during the day and exhausting classes at night. On a particularly busy afternoon, while organizing weekend reservations, Emily was surprised by a massive flower arrangement arriving at the reception desk. Her co-workers immediately gathered around, curious. "Miss Emily Carter, the delivery?" man asked. Confused, she nodded, receiving the flowers along with a golden envelope. Inside was an elegant invitation to dinner at the hotel's restaurant that very evening, signed by Liam Thompson. "This is unbelievable," exclaimed Sophia, her receptionist colleague. "Liam Thompson? That Liam Thompson?" Emily Carter could hardly believe it. Her hands trembled as she reread the invitation. On the back there was a handwritten note. "Your company that night was more special than you realize. I'd like to get to know you better." The rest of the day passed in a blur. When her shift ended, Emily rushed to the staff locker room where she had stored an extra change of clothes, a simple yet elegant dress she wore to go straight from work to college. At 8 sharp, she entered the hotel restaurant feeling out of place among the elegant guests. Liam was already waiting for her, his imposing figure standing out even as he sat in his wheelchair. "You came," he smiled, his eyes shining in a way that made her heart skip. "I admit I was surprised by the invitation," Emily replied, sitting down at the table. "Good surprise or bad surprise?" "I'm still deciding," she smiled, starting to feel more at ease. The dinner flowed naturally. Liam had a way of making her feel special, listening intently to her stories about her family, studies, and dreams. He shared some of his own experiences, talking about the challenges of running a tech company and how the accident that left him in a wheelchair had changed his perspective on life. "You know, Emily, most people treat me differently since the accident, either with pity or just interest in my money, but you make me feel like just another person." "Maybe because to me you are just another person," she replied sincerely. "A very interesting one, I must admit, but still, just a person." That answer seemed to touch him deeply. For a moment, Emily noticed something flicker in his eyes, a shadow of emotion she couldn't quite place. The dinner stretched on for hours, and when they finally said goodbye, Liam made a request that surprised her. "Can I see you again?" "Tomorrow?" Emily hesitated. "I have class tomorrow night. How about lunch then? I promise not to take up too much of your time." She agreed, and so began a series of meetings that became increasingly frequent. Lunches turned into dinners, which turned into weekend outings. Liam always found ways to surprise her, whether with grand gestures or small attentions. However, as they grew closer, Emily began to notice small details that intrigued her. Sometimes, Liam seemed distant, lost in thoughts he didn't share. On other occasions, she caught him watching her with an almost unsettling intensity, as if searching for something in her gestures, in her words. Her family, especially her mother, expressed concern about the relationship. "Sweetheart, rich people don't mix with simple folks without ulterior motives," warned Mrs. Thompson, as she sewed in the small living room of her apartment. But Emily was determined to follow her heart. There was something about Liam that went beyond appearances, beyond money and status. She felt that, just as she saw past his physical condition, he also saw beyond her humble origins. What she didn't know was that, behind this seemingly perfect romance, secrets were beginning to pile up, threatening to destroy everything they were building together. The romance between Emily and Liam Thompson became the most talked-about topic in New York's business circles. The specialized press didn't take long to discover the relationship, and soon speculations arose about the nature of the involvement between the billionaire in a wheelchair and the receptionist from the countryside. One Sunday morning, as they had breakfast on the balcony of Liam's mansion in Miami, Emily absent-mindedly flipped through a magazine featuring an article about them. The sensationalist headline bothered her. "The modern fairy tale billionaire finds love in the arms of an employee. Don't let it get to you," Liam said, noticing her discomfort. "They don't know anything about us." Emily closed the magazine and gazed at the distant sea. "Sometimes I wonder if they're not right to doubt. Everything happened so fast." "Fast doesn't mean wrong," Liam replied, moving his wheelchair closer. "When you know, you know." At that moment, Daniel, Liam's personal assistant, appeared with a phone in hand. "Mr. Thompson, an urgent call." From the board. Emily Carter noticed the sudden change in Liam Thompson's expression. He excused himself and retreated to his office, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Over the past few months, she had noticed a pattern. Whenever certain people called, Liam would completely isolate himself. Restless, she decided to take a walk through the mansion's gardens. That's when she encountered Margaret, the housekeeper who had worked for Liam for over 20 years. "The boss has always been very reserved," Margaret commented while pruning some roses. "But since the accident, he's changed a lot." "How so?" Emily asked, intrigued. It was rare to find someone willing to talk about Liam's past. Before, he was more sociable, always throwing parties here at the mansion. After he returned from the hospital, he started avoiding social events, cut the staff in half, and practically isolated himself from the world. Emily absorbed this information with curiosity. And the accident? How exactly did it happen? Margaret hesitated, glancing around as if checking if they were truly alone. Actually, there are many different versions. Some say it happened during a business trip abroad, others say it happened right here in New York. The strange thing is that no one seems to know exactly how or where it happened. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Daniel, who seemed to be looking for Emily. Mr. Thompson is asking for your presence in the office." As she entered the elegantly decorated room, Emily found Liam gazing at the ocean. Through the panoramic window, there was something different in his posture, a visible tension in his shoulders. "Emily," he began, turning his chair to face her, "I need to tell you something important." Her heart raced. "What is it?" "I need to travel. An urgent situation has arisen at one of our branches abroad." "For how long?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. He paused. "And while I'm away, I want you to think about something." Emily felt the air grow heavier. Liam maneuvered his chair to a desk drawer, from which he pulled out a small blue velvet box. "I won't open this now," he said, placing the box on the table. "But I want you to keep it. When I return, depending on your answer, we can open it together." She took the box with trembling hands, wondering what it could contain. An engagement ring. Could it be that, after only 6 months together, he was already thinking about marriage? "Liam, Don't say anything now," he interrupted gently. "Use this time to think, to be sure this is really what you want." That night, returning to her small apartment in New York, Emily couldn't stop thinking about the velvet box and everything it represented. Her phone rang. It was her mother. "Sweetheart, have you seen the magazine? They're talking about you and that businessman everywhere." "I saw it, Mum." "Emily, you need to be careful. Rich men don't fall in love overnight with simple girls like us. There's always something behind it." Her mother's words echoed in her mind, blending with the revelations of that day. The mysterious circumstances of the accident, the sudden isolation, the secret calls. There were pieces of the puzzle that didn't quite fit. Liam's absence stretched to 4 weeks, far longer than initially expected. During this period, Emily Carter immersed herself in her work and studies, trying to keep her mind occupied. The blue velvet box remained tucked away in her drawer, a constant reminder of the decisions she would need to make. One particularly hectic afternoon at the hotel, Emily received an unexpected visit. Nathaniel Harris, one of the top executives at Liam's company, showed up at the reception asking to speak with her. "Miss Carter," he began, his formal tone contrasting with the casual atmosphere of the hotel cafe where they sat. "I came because I'm worried about Liam. He's more than a boss to me, he's a friend." Emily studied the man in front of her carefully. Nathaniel seemed genuinely concerned, but there was something in his eyes that made her uneasy. "How long have you worked with him?" she asked. 15 years. In fact, I was with him on the day of the accident." Emily's heart skipped a beat. Finally, someone who could shed light on that mystery. "How exactly did it happen?" Nathaniel adjusted his tie, suddenly appearing uncomfortable. "It was during a trip to Switzerland. We were inspecting a potential acquisition when..." He hesitated. "Well, accidents happen at the most unexpected times." Something about the way he averted his gaze raised Emily's suspicions. Nathaniel's version was completely different from what Margaret, the housekeeper, had mentioned. "Miss Carter," Nathaniel continued, his tone shifting subtly, "Liam is a complex man. After the accident, he developed certain peculiarities. Sometimes reality and imagination blur in his mind." "What exactly are you trying to tell me?" "Just that you should know all sides of the story, before making important decisions. For example, did you know that Liam had 3 fiancées before you? All of them gave up after discovering certain inconsistencies in his stories. Emily felt her blood run cold. Why are you telling me this? Because, unlike the others, you seem genuine, and genuine people deserve to know the truth. At that moment, Emily's phone buzzed with a message from Liam. Coming back tonight, can't wait to see you, I have important news. Nathaniel stood up, leaving a card on the table. If you need to talk, or if you discover something that worries you, you can call me anytime. For the rest of the day, Emily couldn't focus on work. Nathaniel's words echoed in her mind, mingling with her own doubts and her mother's warnings. That night in her apartment, she took the blue box out of the drawer and stared at it for a long time. Next to it, she placed Nathaniel's card and a photo of her with Liam taken during a weekend in Aspen. The intercom buzzed, startling her. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Thompson. Emily, there's a young woman downstairs who wants to talk to you. She says it's about Mr. Thompson. Curious and apprehensive, Emily went down to the lobby. An elegant woman was waiting for her, holding a briefcase. Good evening, Emily. My name is Isabella Clark. I was Liam's lawyer for many years. Was? Yes, I resigned 3 months ago, right after you two started seeing each other. Isabella seemed nervous but determined. There's something you need to know. Something that could change everything you think you know about. Liam Thompson. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. Part of her wanted to send Isabella away, to stay in the comfortable bubble of happiness she had built with Liam. But another part, the one that had always guided her in crucial moments, told her she needed to listen. Come in, she said, leading Isabella to her apartment. I think we need to talk. As they climbed the stairs, Emily's phone buzzed again. It was another message from Liam. I'm on my way to your place. Get ready for the biggest surprise of your life. What Emily didn't know was that this night would completely change the course of her story, revealing truths she could never have imagined. Emily's small apartment had never felt as suffocating as it did that night. Isabella Clark, Liam's former lawyer, opened her executive briefcase and began pulling out a series of documents, while Emily watched every move with a mix of anxiety and apprehension. Before we begin, Isabella said, settling into the chair in the small living room, I need you to understand that what I'm about to reveal might be hard to believe. But I have proof of everything. Emily nodded, feeling her heart race. Why did you decide to come to me? Because I've seen this pattern before, Isabella replied, her gaze revealing a mix of concern and guilt. And I can't let it happen again. With trembling hands, Isabella began laying out the documents on the coffee table. There were contracts, medical reports, and photographs that, together, began to tell a very different story from the one Emily knew. Liam's accident never happened, Isabella revealed, her voice low but firm. The wheelchair is part of an elaborate plan to protect not only the company, but also his own life. Emily felt the air escape her lungs. What do you mean? 3 years ago, Liam discovered serious irregularities involving some members of the board of directors, complex schemes that could bankrupt the company. When he threatened to expose everything, he started receiving threats. Emily Carter's hands found the blue velvet box in her lap, clutching it as if seeking some kind of anchor in reality. The idea of the wheelchair came as a defense strategy, Isabella continued. By pretending to be vulnerable, Liam bought himself time to gather evidence and reorganize the company without raising suspicions. The conspirators let their guard down, believing he was no longer a threat. But why keep up this charade for so long? Because the danger never completely passed. And then, Isabella hesitated. Then he met you. The intercom buzzed again, making both women jump. Mrs. Thompson's voice sounded concerned. Emily, Mr. Thompson is here. Isabella quickly began gathering the documents. He can't find me here, but before I go, you need to know one more thing. The other brides didn't give up on the marriage. They were pushed away when they started asking too many questions. Pushed away? How? Liam is a complicated man, Emily. He can be incredibly generous and caring, but he's also capable of doing anything to protect his secrets and his company. With swift movements, Isabella packed up all the documents except for one envelope she left on the table. Here's everything you need to know. The decision about what to do with this information is yours. Emily barely had time to hide the envelope when she heard a knock at her door. Her heart racing, she watched Isabella slip out the back door through the small service area. When she opened the door, she found Liam in his wheelchair, smiling as if nothing in the world was wrong. In his hands, a bouquet of red roses. "Surprise!" he exclaimed, his eyes shining in a way that now seemed different to Emily. "I managed to come back earlier than expected." Emily forced a smile, feeling the weight of the envelope hidden in her drawer. Every word that came out of her mouth seemed artificial, every gesture a rehearsed performance. "It's so good to have you back," she managed to say, accepting the flowers. "I have big news," Liam announced, stepping into the apartment. "But first, I want to know, have you thought about our conversation about the box?" Emily looked at the blue velvet box she still held, now with a completely new perspective. Every moment of her history with Liam began to reshape in her mind, like pieces of a puzzle finally revealing their true image. "Yes," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I've thought a lot about it during this time." Liam's smile widened, completely unaware of the storm brewing in Emily's heart. "Then I think it's time we opened that box, don't you?" The moment that followed seemed to stretch indefinitely. Emily watched Liam, seated in his wheelchair in the middle of her small living room, holding the blue velvet box she had just returned to him. Every detail of his posture, every nuance of his expression now carried a new meaning. "Before we open it," she said, gathering all her courage, "I need to ask you a few questions." Liam's expression shifted subtly. "So of course, my love. What do you want to know?" "How did your accident happen?" The question hung in the air for a few seconds. Emily watched closely as Liam's fingers tensed slightly on the arms of the wheelchair. "You already know that story," he replied, his voice maintaining a studied calm. "Actually, I don't," Emily insisted. "I've heard several different versions. Margaret said it was in New York. Nathaniel claims it was in Switzerland. And curiously, there's no official record of the accident." Liam's smile faltered for a moment. "Why has Nathaniel been talking to you?" "Does it matter? What matters is that each person tells a different story, Liam. And now I want to hear the truth. From your mouth." A heavy silence filled the apartment. Outside, the distant sound of traffic seemed to amplify the tension of the moment. "Emily," Liam began, his voice taking on a more serious tone, "there are things in life we do not because we want to, but because we have to. Decisions we make to protect those we love." "Like pretending to be in a wheelchair?" she asked directly. The shock on Liam's face was quickly replaced by an expression Emily had never seen before, a mix of resignation and something darker. "So who told you? It was Isabella, wasn't it?" "Does it matter? Is it true or not?" Liam let out a long sigh, placing the velvet box on the coffee table. In a move that confirmed all of Emily's suspicions, he stood up from the chair, revealing his true physical condition. "I was going to tell you everything tonight," he said, now standing before her. "That's why I came back early. That's why I brought the ring." "Ring?" Emily repeated, looking at the blue box. "An engagement ring," Liam confirmed. "I wanted to start our life together without secrets, but I see someone beat me to it." "Why, Liam? Why all this charade?" He began pacing the small living room, his movements revealing years of feigned physical limitation. 3 years ago, I discovered that some members of the board were embezzling millions from the company. When I threatened to expose the scheme, the threats began, not just against me, but against everyone I loved. And the wheelchair? It was Isabella's suggestion, ironically. The idea was to appear vulnerable, to make them let their guard down, and it worked. In 3 years, I managed to gather all the necessary evidence, quietly restructure the company, and prepare everything for the right moment. Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. "And me? Was I also part of your plan?" "No!" Liam exclaimed, stepping closer to her. "You were the only unplanned thing in this whole story. When I met you at that event, for the first time in years, I felt truly connected to someone. It was because of you that I decided it was time to end this entire charade." And the other brides? Isabella mentioned they were removed. Liam's face hardened. They found out the truth too soon and threatened to expose everything. I'd had to protect the operation. How did you remove them, Liam? I offered them a comfortable life in other countries. They all accepted. Understand, Emily, everything I did was to protect something bigger than myself. The company employs thousands of people. If those corrupt individuals had gotten what they wanted, many families would have been harmed. Emily stood up, creating distance between them. And how many people have you hurt with your lies? How many lives have you manipulated in the process? I was going to tell you everything today, he insisted, picking up the blue box again. I was going to propose to you and then reveal the whole plan. In 2 weeks, at the shareholders' meeting, I'll present all the evidence. The nightmare will finally be over, and you expect me to just accept it? To pretend that these months of lies mean nothing? No, Liam replied, opening the box and revealing a stunning diamond ring. I hope you understand that sometimes we need to wear masks to protect those we love, and that now finally I can take off all my masks, for you. The sparkle of the diamond ring reflected in the small living room of Emily's apartment, creating tiny points of light that danced on the walls. The silence that followed Liam's revelation seemed to weigh tons on her shoulders. Do you really believe you can justify months of lies with good intentions? Emily finally asked, her voice trembling with restrained emotion. I'm not trying to justify, I'm trying to explain, Liam responded, still holding the ring. Every decision I made was for the greater good, and now I can finally share everything with you. Emily walked to the window of her apartment, gazing at the city lights. Her mind was in turmoil, processing not only the night's revelations, but also re-evaluating every moment they had shared. You know what hurts me the most? She said, turning to face him. It's not just the lie about the wheelchair. It's how you manipulated my feelings from the very beginning. You knew exactly what you were doing when I approached you that first day, didn't you? Liam placed the ring on the table and stepped closer to her, his movements now natural and confident, so different from the vulnerable figure she had known. At first, yes, I saw an opportunity. A hotel employee would be the perfect alibi to maintain appearances. But then something changed. You changed everything. How can I believe you now? How can I know this isn't just another manipulation? At that moment, Liam's phone vibrated. He glanced quickly at the screen and his expression shifted. It's from the board, he said, visibly tensing. Something's wrong. They shouldn't be meeting at this hour. Emily watched as he answered the call, noticing how his posture subtly shifted as if he were putting on an invisible armor. What do you mean access denied? He questioned over the phone, his voice taking on a tone Emily had never heard before. Who authorized this? After a few tense moments of discussion, Liam ended the call. His face had lost its color. Someone hacked our main system, he explained, running his hands through his hair in frustration. All the evidence I've gathered over the last 3 years, it's just gone. How is that possible? Only someone with high-level access could have done this. He paused as if a sudden realization hit him. Isabella, she didn't resign, she was bought. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. The documents she showed me, they were real, but incomplete, Liam finished. She knew exactly what she was doing by coming here today. While she distracted us with revelations about my physical condition, someone was erasing the real evidence of corruption. The apartment seemed to shrink around them. Emily Carter could feel the weight of the decisions she would need to make in the next few minutes. What are you going to do now? She asked, watching Liam Thompson pick up his phone again and start making more calls. I have backups, of course. I'm not naive, but I need to act fast before they find out where they're stored. He paused, looking directly at her. Emily, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but I need your help. My help? How? You work at the hotel. You have access to guest information, check-in and check-out records. I need to know who met with Isabella Clarke in the last few months. Emily felt her stomach churn. Are you asking me to dig into confidential client information? I'm asking you to help me stop corrupt people from destroying a company that employs thousands of workers, people like you, like your family. The engagement ring still gleamed on the table, a promise of a future that now seemed more distant than ever. Emily looked at it, then at Liam, and finally at the envelope Isabella had left, still hidden in her drawer. "If I help you," she said slowly, "I need to know the whole truth. No more half-revelations, no more secrets. You have my word." "Your word?" she laughed humorlessly. "Your word lost its value the moment you got up from that wheelchair. If you want my help, you'll need to do a lot more than make empty promises." Dawn found Emily at her post at the hotel reception, her dark circles disguised by an extra layer of makeup. The previous night had been long, filled with revelations and tough decisions. After hours of discussion, she had agreed to help Liam, but on her own terms. "Good morning, Emily." Sophia, her co-worker, greeted her enthusiastically. "You won't believe what happened last night after you left." "What happened?" Emily asked, trying to sound interested while discreetly accessing the hotel's reservation system. "That famous lawyer, Isabella Clarke, stayed here, and she wasn't alone. She had a super discreet meeting in the conference room with some businessmen." Emily's heart raced. "Do you know who they were?" "Not exactly, but one of them was that executive who came to talk to you the other day. What was his name again? Nathaniel something." Emily felt her hands tremble over the keyboard. Nathaniel Harris, the same man who had tried to warn her about Liam, was involved with Isabella. The pieces were starting to come together. Her phone buzzed with a message from Liam. "Did you get anything?" She looked at the computer screen, where she had just accessed the conference room records. The list of names that appeared there made her stomach churn. It wasn't just Isabella and Nathaniel. There were other key executives from Liam's company, including 3 board members. "I need a break," Emily said to Sophia, standing up quickly. "Can you cover the front desk for a few minutes?" In the women's restroom, she reread the names several times to be sure. Among them was Alexander Bennett, the current chairman of the board of Liam's company. The same man who, according to the documents left by Isabella, was the main person, responsible for the embezzlement scheme. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from an unknown number. "We know what you're doing. Stop now, or the consequences will be severe." Emily felt her blood run cold. How did they find out so quickly? Returning to the reception, she noticed a man in a suit watching her from the lobby. He wasn't a guest, she was sure of that. When their eyes met, he gave a slight nod and left the hotel. "Sophia," Emily called, her voice trembling slightly. "Can you check something for me? I think I saw someone strange in the lobby." "Someone strange?" Sophia asked, confused. "Oh, you must be talking about the new security guard. He started today. Management hired a private security firm last night, kind of in a rush." The revelation hit Emily like a punch. They weren't just watching. They were preparing for something bigger. Her phone vibrated for the 3rd time. It was Liam again. "Emergency board meeting scheduled for this afternoon. I need that information now." Emily glanced at the computer screen, then at the man in the suit who was now outside the hotel, clearly keeping an eye on the entrance. Every decision she made now could have irreversible consequences. With trembling fingers, she began typing, a response to Liam, but stopped. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "Sweetheart, sometimes what seems like the hardest decision is actually the only decision possible." She looked at the ring on her finger. Liam had insisted she wear it, even though she hadn't given him a definitive answer about the engagement. The diamond's sparkle now seemed less dazzling, overshadowed by the weight of the choices she had to make. "Sophia," she called again, her voice now steady, "I need you to do me a favor. A very important favor." The favor Emily asked of Sophia was simple but crucial: to deliver a sealed envelope to Liam during the board meeting, which would take place in one of the hotel's executive suites. The envelope contained not only the records of Isabella's secret meetings, but also a decision that would change everything. As she watched Sophia walk away with the envelope, Emily felt the weight of her choices. Her shift at the hotel was nearing its end, and she knew the next moments would be decisive. "Miss Carter," a familiar voice called out. It was Daniel, Liam's assistant, looking more tense than usual. "Mr. Thompson requests your presence at the board meeting." Emily nodded, already expecting this. "I just need to grab my things." In the elevator, Daniel maintained an uncomfortable silence. Emily could feel his sidelong glance, as if trying to gauge how much she really knew. The presidential suite on the 12th floor had been transformed into an impromptu meeting room. When the doors opened, Emily was greeted by a scene she would never forget. Liam was standing, not in his wheelchair, in front of a table where the board members were seated. Their faces revealed varying degrees of shock and indignation. The envelope she had sent was open on the table, its contents spread out like cards in a poker game. "Gentlemen," Liam began, his voice steady and controlled, "as you can see, the game is over. I have here proof not only of the embezzlement, but also of the conspiracy to destroy the evidence I gathered." Alexander Bennett, the board chairman, stood up abruptly. "This is absurd. You can't prove anything." "Actually," Emily interjected, stepping forward, "he can, and so can I." All eyes turned to her. Emily pulled a small device from her pocket, a flash drive containing her own investigation. "While you were busy trying to erase the digital trails, you forgot something fundamental. Paper. Every secret meeting, every suspicious encounter, it was all recorded in the hotel's old system, the system that was never digitized." Nathaniel Harris laughed nervously. "And you expect us to believe a mere receptionist?" "No," Emily replied, staying calm. "I expect you to believe the independent auditors who are already analyzing this information as we speak." The revelation caused a stir in the room. Emily Carter had spent the previous night not only gathering information, but also sending it to different auditing offices. "You don't understand what you're doing," Alexander Bennett said, his voice now laced with threat. "There are bigger things at play here." "I understand perfectly," Emily replied. "I understand that you used Liam's supposed vulnerability to try to take control of the company. I understand that you manipulated information, threatened people, and tried to destroy evidence. But most of all, I understand that you underestimated the ability of ordinary people to make a difference." Liam watched the scene with a mix of pride and concern. This wasn't the plan he had envisioned, but Emily had achieved something he hadn't expected, turning her own position of apparent fragility into strength. "Emily," he began, but she interrupted him. "No, Liam. Now it's my turn to speak. You weren't the only one keeping secrets. While everyone was busy trying to manipulate each other, I did what I do best. I observed, learned, and acted." The board members exchanged nervous glances. The perfect plan they had crafted was crumbling before their eyes, destroyed not by the billionaire they had tried to bring down, but by the woman they had deemed too insignificant to notice. "Gentlemen," Emily continued, her voice now carrying an authority that surprised everyone, including herself, "you have exactly 1 hour to decide. Either you resign voluntarily from your positions, or the evidence I've gathered goes to the press, all of it." The next hour passed in a blur of heated discussions, veiled threats, and finally resignation. One by one, the board members succumbed to the pressure of the evidence presented. Alexander Bennett was the last to accept defeat, his face red with contained fury as he signed his resignation letter. When the room finally emptied, leaving only Emily and Liam, the silence that settled was heavy with unspoken meanings. "Did you plan this from the beginning?" Liam asked, finally breaking the silence. Emily shook her head, a sad smile on her lips. "No, I learned from the best, didn't I? Sometimes we need to wear masks to protect those we love." Liam took a step toward her, but she stepped back. "Emily, Please let me finish," she interrupted softly. "What you did, pretending to be paralyzed to protect the company and its employees, I can understand. But the lies, the manipulation, the way you tested my feelings that I can't accept." She removed the engagement ring from her finger and placed it on the table. The diamond caught the late afternoon light, casting tiny rainbows on the walls of the suite. "You don't have to do this," Liam said, his voice choked. "We can start over, this time with no secrets." "That's exactly what I plan to do," Emily replied. "Start over, but not with you." At that moment, Sophia knocked on the suite door. "Emily, there's someone asking for you at the reception." Heading down to the lobby, Emily found Margaret, the housekeeper from Liam's mansion, waiting for her. "I saw everything on the security camera," Margaret said, a proud smile on her wrinkled face. You did what no one else had the courage to do? What do you mean? Those men have been stealing from the company for years. Many people knew, but no one did anything. Everyone was afraid of losing their jobs, their positions. Until you came along with nothing to lose and everything to prove. Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. I just did what I thought was right. And that's why I came to make you an offer, Margaret continued. The company will need new leadership, people we can trust. People like you. Me, but I haven't even finished college yet. But there's something no degree can teach, integrity. And that's what saved the company today. Emily looked around the hotel that had been her workplace for the past few years. Every hallway, every room held memories, some sweet, others bitter. But now everything seemed different. I'll think about your proposal, she finally replied. But first I need to finish something. Heading back up to the presidential suite, she found Liam still there, gazing out the window at the city below. You were right about one thing, she said, making him turn around. Sometimes we need to wear masks. But the difference is I never intended to keep mine on. What do you mean? That even when I discovered the truth about you, even when I started gathering evidence against the board, I never stopped being who I am, a simple woman who believes doing the right thing is more important than any wealth or power. Liam watched her with a mix of admiration and sadness. I really fell for you, you know. I fell for you too, Emily admitted. But I fell for an illusion, and now that the illusion is over, I need to follow my own path. 3 months had passed since the tumultuous meeting that changed the course of Liam Thompson's company. Emily gazed at the city through the wide windows of her new office on the 10th floor of the corporate building. As the new director of compliance, she had taken on the responsibility of restructuring the company's internal processes, ensuring transparency and ethics in all operations. The decision to accept Margaret's offer hadn't been easy. Emily had to temporarily put her college studies on hold to fully dedicate herself to the new role, but the practical experience was proving more valuable than any academic theory. Miss Carter, her assistant called from the door. The meeting with the new board members will start in 5 minutes. Emily adjusted her blazer and picked up her folder. The position had required some changes to her wardrobe, but she made sure to keep her outfit simple and elegant, reflecting her essence. In the meeting room, she found familiar and new faces. Sophia, her former colleague from the hotel's front desk, now coordinated the customer service department. Margaret continued as a senior consultant, her experience being crucial during the transition. Good morning, everyone, Emily began, her voice steady and confident. Today marks 90 days since the company's restructuring, and the results are promising. As she presented the numbers and the changes implemented, she couldn't help but notice the empty chair at the head of the table, the seat traditionally occupied by the CEO. Liam had temporarily stepped away from executive management, dedicating himself solely to the board of directors. After the meeting, Margaret called her aside for a private conversation. You've transformed this company, Emily, the lady said, her eyes shining with pride. But what about you? How is your heart? Emily sighed, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability. It still hurts sometimes, not for what could have been, but for what actually was. Every lie, every manipulation, all of it taught me so much about who I am and who I want to be. And who do you want to be? Someone who never has to choose between success and integrity. Someone who proves it's possible to reach the top without losing your essence. The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Daniel, still Liam's assistant. Miss Carter, Mr. Thompson would like to schedule a meeting with you. It's about the social responsibility project you proposed. The project was especially important to Emily, a scholarship and internship program for young people from underserved communities, offering them the opportunities she herself had longed for in her youth. You can schedule it for tomorrow, she replied, maintaining the professionalism her position demanded. After Daniel left, Margaret smiled understandingly. You know that at some point you'll have to deal with him directly, right? I know, Emily nodded. But now it will be on my terms, without masks or manipulations. Returning to her office, she found a small envelope on her desk. Inside was an old photo of the hotel where it all began, along with a note from Liam. "Some masks protect us, others trap us. You taught me the difference, thank you." Emily tucked the envelope into her drawer, alongside other memories from those turbulent times. The engagement ring she never got to wear, the documents Isabella had left, newspaper clippings about the company's restructuring. Each item told a part of her transformation story. On her desk, her laptop displayed dozens of unread emails, scheduled meetings, and pending reports. Corporate life was demanding, but she had found her place. Not as a billionaire's fiancée, not as a mere receptionist, but as a woman who had turned her apparent fragility into her greatest strength. "Miss Carter," her assistant called again. "Your mother is on line 2. Emily smiled, picking up the phone. Mrs. Thompson still worried about her, still warned her about the dangers of the corporate world, but now there was pride in her voice when she spoke of her daughter. "Hi, Mom," she answered, her voice softening instantly. "I was just thinking about you. How about we have lunch together today?" The restaurant they chose for lunch was simple, the same one Emily used to eat at during her days as a receptionist. Mrs. Thompson was already waiting at a table. In the back, her hands calloused from years of sewing, revealing the pride with which she held the executive menu. "Sweetheart, you didn't have to bring me to such a fancy place," she joked, making Emily laugh. "Mom, it's the same place as always. The only difference is that now I can pay without worrying about the end of the month." As they shared the meal, Emily talked about the latest developments at the company, the social project she was about to launch, and how her life had completely changed in such a short time. "You know, sweetheart," Mrs. Thompson said, dabbing the corner of her mouth with a napkin, "when you started dating that businessman, I was so scared. Scared you'd lose yourself, dazzled by that world. And now I see you never needed a prince charming. You built your own castle with your own hands." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Sophia, who was passing by the restaurant during her lunch break. "Emily, Mrs. Thompson. What a wonderful coincidence," she exclaimed, joining them after a warm invitation. "I just received the first applications for the internship program," Sophia commented excitedly. "You won't believe it, but there's a candidate who reminded me so much of you when you first started at the hotel." Emily Carter felt her heart warm. "How so?" "She works as a cleaning assistant at a mall and studies business administration at night. In her motivation letter, she wrote that her dream is to start a company that can help others like her." The parallel didn't go unnoticed. Emily remembered her own journey, her seemingly impossible dreams, and how fate had charted an unexpected path to their fulfillment. After lunch, walking back to the office, Emily received a message from Margaret. "Emergency meeting, Liam is here." Her heart raced slightly, but not for the same reason as before. Now, her encounters with Liam were strictly professional, marked by a mutual respect that had risen from the ashes of their romantic relationship. In the meeting room, Liam stood tall, with no trace of the fragility he had once pretended. Beside him, a presentation displayed the preliminary results of the compliance program Emily had implemented. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began as everyone settled, "the numbers don't lie. In just 3 months, our company has not only recovered from the scandal, but is stronger than ever." All eyes turned to Emily, who maintained her professional composure. As Liam continued, "The ethics and transparency program developed by Miss Carter is being praised by the market. 3 other companies have already approached us, interested in implementing similar models." Emily watched the scene with a sense of accomplishment. There she was, being recognized not for her relationship with Liam, but for her own merit, her competence, and integrity. After the meeting, Liam called her aside for a private conversation. It was the first time they would be alone since the day of their confrontation. "You've built something extraordinary here," he said, his voice carrying a sincerity she had never noticed before. "We built it," she corrected. "Every person in this company contributed to this transformation." "Emily," he hesitated for a moment, "I know I have no right to ask this, but I'd like your help with a new project." "What project?" "I want to create a foundation, a space where talented individuals, regardless of their social background, can develop their entrepreneurial potential. and I'd like you to chair the board." The proposal caught her off guard, not because of the position itself, but because of the symbolism it carried. It was an opportunity to multiply the impact she was already making, to transform other lives just as hers had been transformed. Liam's proposal to chair the board of the new foundation echoed in Emily Carter's mind as she walked through the company's hallways. The afternoon sun streamed through the wide windows, creating a play of light and shadow that seemed to mirror her own internal reflections. "I need a few days to think," she had replied to Liam, maintaining the professional demeanor that now defined her. In her office, she found Margaret waiting for her with a serene expression. "He told you about the foundation, didn't he?" the older woman asked, revealing she already knew about the plans. "You already knew?" "Actually, the idea was mine," Margaret confessed, a gentle smile on her lips. "After everything that happened, I suggested to Liam that he turn his experience into something positive. The foundation will be a space for young talents who, like you, just need an opportunity to shine." Emily sat down in her chair, absorbing the information. "Why me, Margaret? There are more experienced people, with more connections in the industry." "Exactly because of that. You don't need connections or years of experience to make a difference. You've shown that integrity, determination, and courage are the real tools of transformation." The phone rang, interrupting the conversation. It was Sophia, now the social projects coordinator. "Emily, you need to come down to the reception. There's someone here you'll want to meet." Intrigued, Emily went down to the lobby of the corporate building. There she found a young woman who seemed nervous in her cleaning staff uniform, the same candidate for the internship program Sophia had mentioned during lunch. "Hello," Emily greeted her warmly. "I am Emily Carter." "I know who you are," the young woman replied, her eyes shining with admiration. "I read your story online. How you started as a receptionist and transformed not just your life but an entire company." Emily felt a lump in her throat. On her desk, on the 10th floor, was the proposal to chair a foundation that could change the lives of dozens of young people like the one standing before her. "What's your name?" she asked. "Olivia Martinez. I work at the mall nearby and study business administration at night. I know the chances of being accepted into the program are slim, but I had to try." Emily observed Olivia carefully. She saw in her the same spark in her eyes that she once had, the same determination that had pushed her through every obstacle. "Olivia, would you like to have coffee with me? I want to hear more about your dreams." As they headed to the building's cafe, Emily realized that her own journey had only been the beginning of something greater. Every challenge faced, every disappointment overcome, every victory achieved, it had all been preparation for this moment. Over coffee, Olivia shared her dreams of creating a professional training company for people from underserved communities. Her eyes lit up as she talked about how she wanted to make a difference in others' lives. "You know, Olivia," Emily said after listening intently, "sometimes life presents us with unexpected paths. The secret isn't knowing exactly where you'll end up, but staying true to who you are along the journey." Back in her office, Emily found a new email from Liam. The subject line was simple: "Your answer." She looked out the window, gazing at the city stretching to the horizon. Somewhere out there were other Emilys, other Olivias, waiting for just one opportunity to turn their dreams into reality. With renewed determination, she began typing her reply. "I accept the position as chair of the Foundation's board, but on one condition. I want full autonomy to implement a mentorship program that connects young talent with experienced professionals. We don't just want to give opportunities, we want to create a support network that multiplies transformations." The inauguration of the New Horizons Foundation took place 6 months later at an event that brought together business leaders, politicians, and most importantly, young people full of dreams and determination. The chosen location couldn't have been more meaningful: the Grand Central Hotel Chicago, where it all began. Emily Carter was radiant in her navy blue executive suit, greeting the guests with the same simplicity and genuine interest that had always characterized her. By her side, Olivia Martinez, Now her executive assistant and the first beneficiary of the mentorship program was organizing the final details of the ceremony. "Everything is ready," Olivia informed, consulting her tablet. "The journalists are already in position and the first 50 scholarship recipients have just arrived." Emily smiled, remembering her own journey. "Make sure they feel comfortable. Many of them have never been in an environment like this before." The main hall, where she had once worked as a receptionist, was elegantly decorated for the occasion. Banners with the Foundation's mission adorned the walls, transforming talents into future leaders. Mrs. Thompson, seated in the front row, couldn't hold back her tears of pride. Beside her, Margaret smiled serenely, as if witnessing a perfectly executed plan. When Liam Thompson took the stage to deliver his speech, there was no trace left of the man who once had to hide behind a wheelchair. His posture was that of someone who had finally found peace with his own power and responsibility. "A year ago," he began, "this company faced its greatest crisis. Not a financial or structural crisis, but a crisis of values. When I began my journey at this very hotel years ago, I was just a receptionist with big dreams," she began, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had found her true path. "Today, I look at each of you and see the same spark in your eyes, the same determination that brought me here." In the audience, emotional faces reflected the impact of her words. Every person present had been touched in some way by the story of transformation that began with a simple receptionist who dared to dream big. "True success," she continued, "isn't in the titles we earn or the power we accumulate. It's in the lives we transform, the doors we open for others, and the courage to remain true to ourselves even when the world pressures us to change." As she concluded her speech, Emily Carter felt she had finally found her place in the world, not as the bride of a billionaire, not as a powerful executive, but as someone who had transformed her own story into an instrument of positive change for others. The sun set over the Rocky Mountains, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange, much like that evening when it all began. But now Emily knew that every ending was just the start of a new story. And so, amidst smiles, tears, and renewed dreams, one cycle ended and another began, proving that the greatest transformations happen not when we change who we are, but when we find the courage to truly be ourselves. Dear listeners, we hope Emily Carter's journey has touched your hearts and inspired you to believe in your own dreams. To continue following equally captivating and transformative stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. Leave your like and share your thoughts in the comments. Which moment of the story resonated most with you? We have a special playlist with other inspiring narratives waiting for you in the link on the left. Every day, we bring new stories that explore the beauty and complexity of life. Your journey of transformation can also begin here. See you in the next video. It took someone to show us that true leadership doesn't come from titles or positions, but from courage and integrity. His eyes met Emily's in the audience, and for a moment, they shared a silent understanding of how much they had grown since their first encounter. The New Horizons Foundation is born today not just as a social project, but as a commitment to transformation. Every young person who passes through here will have the opportunity that Emily had to prove their worth and achieve their dreams. When it was Emily's turn to speak, she surprised everyone by setting aside the microphone and walking among the scholarship recipients. "Look around," she said, her voice carrying the gentle authority of someone who knows the true meaning of leadership. "Each of you is here because you believe you can make a difference, and you can. I was once exactly where you are, dreaming of a future that seemed impossible." She paused, her eyes scanning the young, hopeful faces. "But what I've learned on my journey is that true success isn't about gaining power or wealth. It's about staying true to ourselves as we grow, using our influence to open doors for others, and turning our own experiences, good and bad, into tools for positive change." Sophia, now the Foundation's Director of Social Projects, approached with a surprise. Emily's old receptionist badge, framed like a precious relic. "This badge," Emily continued, holding the frame tenderly, represents not just where I started, but all the lessons that brought me here. He reminds me daily that each of you, no matter your origin or current circumstances, has the power to transform realities. The ceremony continued with the presentation of the first projects to be developed by the scholars. Each presentation reflected the same spirit of innovation and social responsibility that had inspired the creation of the foundation. At the end of the event, as the guests dispersed, Emily Carter found a moment of quiet in the same place where she had met Liam Thompson. The view of the Rocky Mountains was still breathtaking, but now she observed it with different eyes, the eyes of someone who had learned that the greatest transformations begin with small acts of courage. 1 year after the inauguration of the New Horizons Foundation, Emily was back at the Grand Central Hotel Chicago, this time to celebrate the graduation of the first class of the mentorship program. The hall was filled with success stories. 50 young people who, like her, had transformed their lives through determination and opportunity. Olivia Martinez, now the coordinator of the mentorship program, presented the impressive results of the first year. 3 startups founded by the scholars, dozens of promotions at major companies, and, most importantly, a support network that continued to grow and strengthen. Our greatest achievement, Olivia explained to the new candidates, is not the numbers, but the people we've transformed. Every success story here represents dozens of other lives indirectly impacted. Emily observed the scene with a mix of pride and gratitude. Her own journey had become an inspiration to others, proving that success and integrity could go hand in hand. Mrs. Thompson, always present at important moments, chatted animatedly with some of the graduates' family members, sharing her own perspective on her daughter's transformation. "You know," she said, "my Emily taught me that sometimes we need to go through storms to discover our true strength. The important thing isn't to avoid challenges, but to face them without losing our essence." In a quieter corner of the hall, Liam spoke with Margaret about the foundation's next steps. His relationship with Emily had evolved into a professional partnership based on mutual respect and admiration. "You know, Margaret," he commented, watching Emily from afar, "sometimes I think I needed to lose everything to truly find my purpose. The foundation is making more of a difference than the company ever did." Margaret smiled wisely. "Sometimes, Liam, destiny takes us down winding paths to teach us the most important lessons." At the end of the ceremony, Emily took the stage for her closing speech. The engagement ring she never got to wear had been transformed into 50 graduation rings, a symbol of turning something personal into a collective legacy.